Hello and welcome back to MechaCon. I'm Victor Dandridge, the hardest working man in comics. Joining me are some of the greatest comic creators in the world. You heard my name, Greg. Don't you be doing no quotes.
Oh,
you know what it is. Yeah, I saw you. I
didn't realize I was on camera. My fault.
Yeah. You terrible. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MechaCon 2020. We're about to have a great conversation talking about accuracy versus acceptance in today's comics. So joining us today, and I'm obviously going to put him out on blast first. Greg, let's have you introduce yourself, my G.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right.
Greg Anderson, Elysee, writer and creator of Is None of the Were Spider. A lot of my works tend to incorporate a lot of Black cultural stories, mythology, folklore, and so on and so forth. And I'm all about trying to represent people and change the narrative, especially marginalized people.
Excellent. Next up, we have Dorphise.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Dorphise. I am the creator and writer for Spirit's Destiny and Nia Kaler. And right now I'm exploiting the Haitian culture in the indie culture right now. Why are you laughing?
Okay, it's just like saying exploiting. I don't know if I would call it exploiting.
Because nobody knows much about the Haitian culture but me and Greg. So yeah, that's basically what I'm doing.
Celebrating, inviting into. Okay, there we go. Next up, Jason.
Hi, my name is Jason Piperberg. I was the artist on the Raising Dion comic, and I'm also a comic artist who I'm self-publishing a book called Spaceman and Bloater. I've got volume 1 out right now, and I'm working on volume 2 between some other freelance projects that I'm working on. So
love it. Next up, Sebastian.
Hello, folks. My name's Seb, and I run a company called Stranger Comics. Our probably our most famous title is Niobe, the Niobe series, and the Untamed, where we have a development deal over at HBO, and representing the beautiful fantasy world of Asunder at Stranger Comics.
Love it. And last but certainly not least, Mr. David Walker.
Hello, my name's David Walker. I write comic books. That's me.
So humble. Like, that's it. Like, come on, man. You got more than that. We've got one more person that's coming in. As soon as he connects up, I will put him on. Let's see. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're good. Brian, it's your turn to introduce yourself, good sir. He's pushing the buttons. He's pushing the button. Brian, you with us?
Hello, my name's Brian Johnson.
Right. This is it's like being called on at church. Okay. Well, Brian's still trying to join us officially. Let's start off with a very interesting question. Who was the first Black superhero you remember reading, and how well did you relate to that character at the time? And Dorphise, I want to start with you on that one.
I would say Storm.
Okay.
Because of her African culture and how much it relates to me.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of the first Black superheroes, especially her wittiness, how she took control and stuff. Because we was back in the days, what I read upon, Haitian women when they was in the military, they used to take over. They was much more leaders. So that was my favorite first Black superhero. Then Static Shock.
Stellar. Brian, let's give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and answer that question if you could. Yet again, Brian's like, nope. I don't know if he can hear us or not. Brian, can you hear us? Stop moving if you can hear us.
That's that mic.
Stop moving. Yeah.
I don't know if he cares. Okay, so Greg, let's have you jump on that one.
So you said the first Black character?
First Black superhero that you ever read, and how well did you relate to them?
That I ever read. Well, I mean, I'm gonna say the first one that I've even seen, period, was because I was a huge Hercules and Xena fan growing up. And I remember how shocked and surprised I was when Gina Torres showed up as Nebula.
Respect.
And that was like the first time I've seen a Black person in a fantasy show that I was obsessed with. That really stood out to me. And when I was watching X-Men, of course, we had Storm, but when I saw Bishop, because I never saw like a black male superhero at the time when I was growing up, and that just blew my mind. And that, when I started reading comic books, I wasn't reading any X-Men books unless I saw Bishop or Storm on the cover. And
that was it. Okay,
was,
okay. I respect that. Unironically, Jason, I'm asking you the exact same question, and I absolutely need it.
I think it probably was with the Justice League cartoon with Jon Stewart.
Okay.
And I loved Green Lantern. I mean, and also like when you get more into the comics, just the fact that, I mean, Kyle Rayner's always like the one that's supposed to be the artist, but Jon Stewart's always very like architectural with his constructs, and I always thought that was really cool. Just, I mean, that was probably the first exposure I had to a black superhero.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Did you feel that same sort of simpatico, that idea of design and structure, the pseudo militants that John had?
Yeah, I mean, I'm relatively detail oriented, so I don't know if that influenced I mean, I was pretty young when it happened, so I don't know if that influenced my trend toward being pretty detail oriented, or if it was, you know, more inherent in my personality. But yeah, it's also just, yeah, he seems to have a code, you know, like that.
Right.
That was always neat. I like characters that have kind of moral stances on, like, you know, uncompromising in certain ways.
Nice. David, what about you?
Well, my first black superhero, because I'm old enough to be everybody's dad on this panel, was Falcon. Was Sam Wilson Falcon, and I couldn't stand him when I first saw him, because this is back when it was Captain America and the Falcon, when they shared the title, and the first comic I ever saw him. I always tell the story. I can't remember what issue number it is, but I remember the story specifically, and I had never seen like a sidekick treated worse than Falcon was treated, right? And it was just like Captain America stopped short of calling him boy, but he's really like dismissive of him, and so I was probably like maybe 6 or something like that, and I was so excited because there was this black superhero on the cover of this comic, and then it was like immediately turned to disappointment because it also said Captain America and Falcon, so I expected Falcon to have more something, you know,
right.
But whatever it was, he didn't have it. And so it was a long time before I found a black superhero that I was really, really into, that I could relate to.
Gotcha. Sebastian?
Yeah, it's funny. You try and rack your brain as far as when that first moment really was, and I think, you know, as far as what people think of superheroes, or just the concept of what a hero is, you know, and I think in comics, and I'll jump into the comics in a second, I'm assuming it's probably Storm, but as far as people that you view as seeming super heroic, was maybe someone like Jim Kelly. You know, because I was such an Enter the Dragon fanatic, and I was like, you know, just blown away with some of these characters like Bruce Lee and Jim Kelly, who just seem like mythological type characters who could I aspire to be something like that. And growing up in the kind of place I grew up, they really, you know, kind of reflected not only kind of just the fighting spirit I wished I could have had, also kind of the philosophies. And so that those were a lot of things that kind of moved me. And then and I think just my earliest remembrance of comics was Black Panther and Storm, and I think it was around the same time. I could definitely relate to Storm because she was claustrophobic, and I've always dealt with claustrophobia just on that. But just even within, I feel like the X-Men herself, being the leader that she was inherently, and wanting to feel like you're the leader of your crew, but she should have always been the leader. And I was always like, all right, when are we going to elevate and celebrate this aspect of who she really is as a queen? And also slightly feeling like, because she was from Kenya, that she was still an outsider among the outsiders. Right. And I think that also kind of checked a few boxes. And the thing that disappointed me was always the fact that they always had her, not always, depending on the artist, it was like, how come she had the same facial features as Jean Grey, but just with a nice kind of light tan? That always kind of infuriated me. Those are the disappointing aspects of it. It's like, yeah, you know.
Right.
And then working with artists, a lot of times you're always trying to get them to make sure they're not afraid to embrace African features, you know.
I understand.
I'll keep on rambling, but I'll shut up now.
No, it's all good. Brian. Hey, he's here. Hello. First, let's have you introduce yourself to everyone.
My name is Brian Johnson. I was intimidated when Greg popped on. All the muscles came on the screen and just said "pow," and I was there. You go. Look, see, you already knocked Dorphise off, man. So you're gonna knock everybody off again. Put the gun show away. But just an illustrator from Detroit trying to do things that encourage the next generation of artists.
I love that. So, with keeping it up with this question, who was the first Black superhero that you read, and did you relate to them at the time that you read it?
Truthfully, if my father said it was Black Panther, I don't remember reading Black Panther when I was that young.
Hey, listen, don't question your pops. That's a good way to get in trouble. Don't do it.
I'm bigger than him. I ain't worried about it. But
whoa.
No, the first one was Storm in X-Men, to be honest with you. It was when Claremont was writing, and it was the X-Men when they were going up against the adversary. I think that was his name.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And that was the first time I really saw a Black character take the lead of a prominent group in comics.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And I had no problem that it was a woman in charge because it's Storm, you know.
Right. And she does it well.
She's badass. You know,
absolutely.
she carries that mantle very well. So yeah, that was pretty much the first time.
All right, so I got a deep philosophical question for all of you. Mainstream, independent, alternative, editorial, Black. Would you say that these all make up styles of comics? And I'm going to start with, right? I do what I can. I'm going to start with you, Sebastian.
I'm going to do what a lot of contestants do and say, could you repeat the question?
Sure. Mainstream, independent, alternative, editorial, or Black. Are these all styles of comics?
I think it depends on the creator and what, if they want to feel like they want to kind of fit into a certain box. I think certain creators want to feel like they're kind of throwing their shit against the wall and see what sticks, or they suddenly see a hashtag trending, so it becomes what seems to be a moment in time. And I think also when you look at things, take a step back and you look at things, whether it's editorial or Marvel, the big two, independent or Black, where are we in history, and what represents philosophically what a monolithic concept is to be Black, or to be a Marvel, or to be a DC, or to be indie? Because so I just think that, like, I mean, even the stuff that I do, you know, like, is that, oh, it's fantasy. Well, fantasy and elves, that's not Black, that's European culture. And until people do a little bit of research and research the origins of really what fairies are and really where they come, you know, everyone has this this Wikipedia, immediate Google sense of righteousness and knowledge, which is, I think, it's surface, it's cosmetic. So I think it always comes down for me to the creator and what their intention is with their creation. And I'm not a big label dude, so, but I know a lot of checks and balances for people are, and you experience it in corporate, and you experience it in indie, and you experience it with consumers that want to fit you into a box. Right. I think it's just do you as a creator subscribe to that philosophy? So
that's a good one. That's a good one.
I just say
tag in Dorphise only because I know she's driving.
You know,
only because I know she's driving. I don't want her to crash or nothing like that.
You're good. If you could drive in Miami, you're good, man.
So yes, as the question was, mainstream, independent, alternative, editorial, black. Would you say that these all make up a style of comics?
No, I don't think it makes up a style of comics. I think it's just it's just being normalized now. It's not a style at all. We were so used to seeing European characters now, and then now they're showing more people of color, so they're normalizing it. So it's not a style at all. I don't think that at all. My son, I introduced him to Spider-Man, Peter Parker. Now he loves Miles Morales. He does not say Spider-Man. He said Miles Morales. Mommy, I want to watch Miles Morales. Me and Greg, we always argue about the Spider Universe movie. So yeah, that's one of my son's favorite movie. But yeah, I just think it's more normalized now.
Greg, let's have you jump in on that one.
I would say they're not necessarily an individual style, because I feel there's different styles within each of those particular mediums and circles. Even though the mainstream may have a style that's more common within the mainstream that you might not see in an abundance when it comes to indie works, there isn't even a general style of saying black comics. You know, the artwork in my book is nowhere near similar to some of the stuff that Sebastian has, or any of the independent stuff that David has, and everyone else around. We all have our own particular types of books. There's sometimes where it might seem closer to mainstream style, but then when you say mainstream, then you have particular artists who don't quite fit the mainstream style at the same time. So I wouldn't say there's a style in particular for each of them. It's all over the place. And just like Sebastian was saying earlier, sometimes it might even depend on the era. At what point are we talking about? Because there was a particular style that, say, Marvel books had in the 90s that you don't see at all now. Maybe you'll get little snippets of it, but it's not as abundant as it was back then, and throughout. It constantly changes, constantly adapts, just like how readers adapt to what it is that they enjoy.
Well said. Jason, what about you?
It's hard for me to totally voice this, like in terms of whether I think it's a style or not. I feel like style and genre just in general, when it comes to storytelling, sort of echoing what Sebastian said, it's all sort of, to some degree, it's like clothing, right? It's you're dressing up whatever the core of the story is. You want to, hopefully you're coming into a story, you're trying to write something that's personal to you, that's honest, that's authentic to whatever your viewpoint in life is. And then you're dressing it up with sci-fi or, whatever, like a genre, if you look at something like, if oddly, mainstream, if we're talking about like Captain America, the Winter Soldier, because I just watched it a little while ago again, it's more of like it's like a superhero movie kind of, but it's almost more like a spy espionage thing. And you're blending that kind of stuff. So it's not, and when it comes to the idea of blackness being a style, like Greg was saying, there's so many different facets of that. So I don't think you can throw that under all one umbrella, because everyone that's doing a story that someone might consider to be a black styled story, everyone's gonna, like, the creators are going to come at that from different avenues. They're going to look at it from different perspectives, and ultimately you can't just label it as that, I don't think.
Well said. Very well said. Brian?
Yeah. Piggyback and combine basically what everybody's saying. It's like a melting pot right now. There is no certain, in my opinion, style or genre. Everybody's, at least when it comes to being independent, everybody's doing their own thing that fits what they're trying to do for their product. They're if you look for the longest time, everybody was trying to shadow what Image was doing back in the day. Even Marvel tried to do it and failed miserably at it when they tried to do, what was that, Heroes Reborn?
We don't talk about that. That never happened.
Yeah, okay. That went away with the snap. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really think there is. I think it's just a melting pot of everybody trying to get in where they can fit in and introduce their style of storytelling now.
Okay. I respect that. David?
I agree with everything everyone said at this point. What I would add to it is I tend to think of it as there's corporate comics and then there's everything else. And corporate comics are like, Marvel, which is owned by Disney, DC is owned by AT&T, Time Warner, and those are the books that if you're working on them, someone is paying you a page rate. It's work for hire. And then there's just about everything else, right? There's a couple, I would call them pseudo corporate comics that, like Valiant is, you'd be doing work for hire. Archie, you would be doing work for hire. Boom. But everything else is non-corporate in my mind. And then it breaks down into degrees. And it's like, what some people might consider a black comic, others might not. What some people, it's all about perception. A lot of it's about intent. And I tend to break it down from there to, okay, what do I find appealing? What do I find aesthetically pleasing? What's not my cup of tea, right? I was just reading a comic last night, reading a graphic novel. I was so excited to read it. The art was just fire. It was just tremendous. And the writing was terrible. Like, it was so bad. I was like, why did I buy this thing? But
I was gonna say, come on now, Greg.
Unfortunately, because I know some of the people involved in making it. But at the same time, it got made. And who am I to say, just because I didn't like the writing doesn't mean somebody else won't like it, right? And to me, again, it's about what resonates with you. What do you like? And I think that this is a very interesting time for both this medium and this industry, right? And the entry level to comics, the entry threshold to comics is so low. Like, anybody can make a comic and put a comic out. Now, getting people to read it or making money off of it, that's something else completely different, right? But we can all make our own comics. And it's almost like the wild, wild west, and I see so much amazing stuff. I was just like, I literally 2-3 weeks ago, I had to stop going on to Kickstarter because every month I was dropping more on Kickstarter than I've done in comics in years. Like, I had one month where it's like a $400 bill on Kickstarter, because everything, all the campaigns ended right around the same time, and suddenly I get my credit card bill, and I was like, "Yo, what happened?" And then I realized, but that's just it. It's like, you go on to Kickstarter right now, and especially since we don't have conventions to go to, so we're not getting to see each other face to face and talk to creators and buy stuff. It's like that community, that world to me is like, I'm finding stuff I never would find otherwise, unless one of y'all told me about it. You know what I'm saying? And that's so that's a whole other world in and of itself. A whole other style in and of itself, because to me there is a very strong sense of community, or there can be. It's not with, obviously not every campaign has it, not every project has it, but I see it.
Well, can
I jump on one thing?
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's because it's such a great question, and I think when we're talking about where we're at in history, is when you think of certain movements with medium, and you go, okay, where are we at in today's medium? Kind of echoing what Dave was saying, is you go, at what point did comics? It's like, at what point did swing and jump blues go to rock and roll, go from that kind of era to mainstream rock and roll? And so I think that also in comics, we're in such a intriguing time with obviously the success of Black Panther and everything that we know is literally the right now of, are we in some kind of this space in time of, and is it a window? Is it a window for corporate to go, right now, this is the rock and roll moment where we can look at the independent black comic space and throw it down the labels of Afrofuturism, and are we hitting these various things? And then it goes from that to jump to those kind of corporate machines. So I think that's the kind of the interesting time frame that we're in now, and I think it behooves us even more as creators to stay even more true to the intention of the material that we want to put out. What is our intention?
Absolutely. So based on both of those statements, actually leads into my next question. Are we at a place where we can now demand a higher quality from the output from what is Black comics, where before we might have just been happy that it exists? Are we now at a place where we have enough of a library where we can start to critique and catalog and say, I like this one, I don't like this one, I think this should be better, I think this is worse? Are we at that space yet? Greg, you want to jump on that, Greg?
Why you gotta go to me, bro?
What you mean?
Nah, I mean, I say, yeah, we do. We do have that, because we have this a reason why we have so many different Black conventions going on throughout the country. We have the content. We have the great amount of comic creators who do Black work. And I'm saying Black work as in people who do works that showcases Black people as lead characters. We have that. And just like we said before, there's so many different genres. My books are mad different from everyone on this panel right now. You know, we all dabble with different things, different genres. So of course we're gonna have different audience members as well. Somebody might pick up David's book and be like, nah, fuck Greg's book. His book is whack. And vice versa. And that's just, I think we are at that point. And at the same time, we do have to look at our own work and just think, is my stuff good enough to be on the shelves? Because there was definitely a point where, as a consumer, when I was getting into a lot of indie books and going into Black cons and wanting to support every Black artist that had a table, there was some books that I was like, I'm picking it up because I want to support my
culture.
For the culture. But when I would read the book and I'm just like, this is terrible. And you don't want to tell the person that, but sometimes, you know, if there's a way where you could sort of, you know, hey, can I give you a critique? You know, sometimes you'll actually get a creator who'll be like, yeah, you know, tell me everything because I want to get better at it. And then there's some who take it to heart. It's like, no, I put so much of my energy on it, and then you're going to critique it, you're going to trash it. And then they don't really go anywhere. You don't really see them anymore after, you know, a while. And that's just something that we as creators, we have to consider as well, because that saying goes about how we got to work twice as hard. That's pretty much it. You know, I've discovered that a lot when it comes to the comic industry, because there's so many also amazing comic creators whose work is just bonkers, but they're never being considered at all by the mainstream whatsoever. You know, and it's just we just got to keep on hustling, and we got to stay on top of each other when it comes to the quality of our works, and we got to be open-minded enough to understand sometimes if someone is telling you something is not working, it's not because they're haters, it's because something is not quite clicking when it comes to your work. Not to say you have to take every critique someone gives you. Sometimes you have to realize, all right, what you're saying, I appreciate it. It doesn't work with the theme of what I'm going for, and that's totally fine. But as a whole, you gotta come to reality and sometimes understand maybe my work is not up to par, or maybe there's something I can do. Hit up a creator that you enjoy and just be like, hey, can you tell me about your process? How'd you think about this? Can you check out my stuff if you have the time? You know, is it working? What's not working? And so on and so forth. There's a lot of room for growth.
Well said. Very well said. From the art side, Brian, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, because like Greg said, when you go to a lot of these conventions, you are walking past some of these tables and you look, and sometimes you just wish you had one. You remember the little hoverboards, just so you can keep coasting right by. Because some of the stuff, although it may have great material to read, if it's not a good package, we are not going to stop and pay attention to it. And the downside is, like Greg said, if we try to critique or offer a criticism, the person automatically gets in their mind, if they're not willing to hear it, who the hell are you to try to tell me what I'm doing? I'm sitting at a table and you walking by.
Right.
Just because a person is walking by does not mean that they can't offer something to help benefit your product that's out there.
Some insight, because you
because
don't want them to walk by.
No, you don't want them to walk by. You want them to stop and look and say, hey, I like this. Would you be willing to do X, Y, and Z? But most of us as creators, you know, and be honest, we all have that little bit of sensitivity. You know, if you poke us with a pen, we're going to bleed and we're going to be like, well, why'd you poke me? Because I'm trying to wake you up to see what you're not doing right. Or that you're doing one aspect very well, but the other aspects, no, it's not
lacking.
Working.
Yeah,
severely lacking. Because like David said, it's so many Kickstarters that you look at and that people are putting out there and you're like, oh damn, and then you get it, oh damn, what is this?
It's a different oh damn though. That's a lopsided.
I spent $20 on this and the art is slamming, but the story is
whack. Just plain whack.
Man, that's a good politically correct word. Whack.
That's what happens. Jason, as the darkest skinned dude on this panel, if you don't mind jumping in on this one, you know, having some insight here. Because obviously, you know, if you're working on projects like Raising Dion,
right.
There's going to be critiques of how well you are representing, and how do you handle that?
That's actually what I was thinking about that as everyone else was talking. I think, like with anything, right? Like any writer or artist is going to have to do some level of research, right? But the further away that you are from having that be a part of yourself, having that subject matter be a part of you. Like obviously, I don't know the Black experience as a Black person. And so I guess what I try to do whenever I have to draw, you know, Black characters or non-white characters in general is just trying to be as, like, you know, getting a lot of reference, trying to be specific, trying to not fall into the tropes of, you know, making all of the non-white characters look exactly the same. And then also just being willing to hear like, hey, you didn't do that very well, you know, and like taking that with me into the, you know, like just being willing to take that with me into whatever the next project is, and not, you know, just like with anything, like as an artist in general, you don't want to take feedback as a personal affront to you or to your skill set. It's just, you know, you're going to mess up. Everyone was bad. Like nobody starts out being good at this. And, you know, you might have some natural aptitude, but you have to be willing to hear that you made a mistake or, you know, you could improve. And, it shouldn't be that hard of a thing to just accept when you've messed up and admit it and just move on. Like, and also that doesn't mean like burn your work. It doesn't mean like, oh no, I did it wrong. Like now I'm a bad person. It's just like, you know, no, it's okay. As long as you realize that you could have done it better and you do better in the future, then that's all anyone can do.
There you go. Very well said. No, I like that. David, Seb, do you want to add to that? I mean, you guys kind of touched on it before. Is there anything that you want to add to that?
Well, I don't remember the question at this point. So
the question was, have we reached a point where we can be critical of, you know, created Black content?
Okay. Oh, yeah. Well, I think we should always be critical, right? I think we should always be critical. I think that the key thing, though, is that we're at a point where as creators, we need to be critical not only of ourselves but what's going on out there, and we need to explore more deeply. I think one of the problems with comics is that a lot of comic creators draw most of their influence and inspiration from comics, and that's actually a very shallow. That can be a very shallow pool to be wading in, right? Especially when you look at in terms of literature and film and music, but if you can look at all these other art forms as well as comics very critically and analyze them and break them apart, reverse engineer them, then not only as a reader and as a fan, you're going to evolve, your tastes are going to evolve, but as creators, we're going to evolve too. I mean, I've been, since the pandemic started, I've really been immersing myself in old comics. And by old comics, I mean a lot of stuff from EC, reading a lot of stuff by Alex Toth, Will Eisner, Bernard Krigstein, all these creators from the 40s, 50s, and into the 60s, because honestly, there's not a single person in comics doing anything better than what they did back then.
Thanks.
The problem is a lot of creators right now are only looking to like maybe the 90s or the 80s to educate themselves, to look at things critically. And, I'm looking at stuff going, oh, wait a sec, this is what Gil Kane did in 68. Imagine what he could be doing now, except Gil Kane is dead. So how do I take what he's done and how do I stand on his shoulders? How do I stand on the shoulders of Maurice Severin, of John Severin? And that's like, I believe as creators, but as fans, that's where we have to become critical, and we have to look at stuff that maybe we loved back in the day. Like I'll relate it to film. Like when I was a kid, I loved James Bond movies, but I look at them now and I'm like, yo, these movies, some of these are they're whack. And Bond is like a walking STD, man. He kills.
Listen. The clinic needs of James Bond and James T. Kirk, them Jameses. Woo!
Bro, I've been watching the original Star Trek on Netflix the last couple weeks. I just started, I'm watching one episode a day in order. And I haven't watched original Star Trek in years, man, decades. And this is what I'm talking about. I still love the show, but Kirk is like straight up creepy, like sexual predator, nasty freak, man. And it's like, and the way they shot it too is because they would always do that, like that extreme lighting over his eyes and the music, and it'd be like, oh, there's Miri. She's just turned 13, about to enter puberty, and Jim's like, you're a lovely girl, Mary. You're becoming a woman now. It's just like,
where did this conversation just go? Like that was.
I've been waiting for like 4 or 5 days to say something.
Dorphise, the question at hand here was: have we reached a point where we can be critical of Black comics, characters, creators, or are we still in an infancy where just allowing them to exist is necessary?
Yeah, we can be critical.
You want to throw in on that?
Yeah, we can be critical. Like that shit, we're critical with everything else. So why can't we be critical with Black comics? Like, come on now. Come on now. So I want that type of energy with all comics. So it shouldn't be like, no. That's just phony energy right there.
Sebastian, what were you going to say?
Yeah, the way I kind of think is where we're at right now is your general consumer is used to your $1 billion corporation type shit going on. So what happens is it's like when you go to a movie now, you're desensitized. You're desensitized to the grandeur of Lord of the Rings or Avengers or Star Wars, these massive, massive things. And when you're a kid and you go to a convention or you go to the comic shop and you got $20 in your pocket and you're like, yo, I got 20. Am I gonna get Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, this other version of Spider-Man, and I'm out because they're paying for the theoretically the highest level quality, and then they go to the indie And then if you start going into dissecting, the indie, or the, in quotes, black indie, or the black fantasy indie, or the black noir indie, or the this, that, and the other, and they're looking at $20 going, okay, shit, do I put $4 back? And I'm going to give this one a shot. So I think it's then extremely not only incumbent, it's necessary for us to critique our fellow creators' works, because that kid who's going to take a shot on us with his $4 or $20 or the variants or the whatever the case is, that's a shitload of money, and especially in this time. So the consumer deserves the effort and the responsibility for us to impart with our creations. Otherwise, we should do something else with our life. Otherwise, we realize we'll never dunk like Kobe. We'll never do something else then, because we have to honor that. We have to honor the medium and honor that. And I think the trouble is too, a lot of times in popular entertainment, whether it's comics or film or music, we're so wanting to celebrate the culture that we celebrate mediocrity. And we celebrate at times stuff that's straight up cosmetic, like, oh, okay, here's just because you got a fro and you're rocking some sage doesn't make you a spiritual person. Right. Just because you've got X, Y, and Z. So I think what happens is we want it to be so badly. We want it to be so much, the marketing package, the presentation to fit the reality, that we'll go, that's good. Oh yeah, that's my shit. That's my shit. Hey, and it's the same across the board. So we as creators have to critique each other and be honest about it.
Yep.
Well said.
Yep.
Well said.
I totally agree.
So
hey, Larry.
Obviously, we have a wide variety of ideas of what it means to make Black comics, read Black comics, create Black comics. So what statement do you hope your work adds to the conversation of Black comics? And Brian, I'm going to start with you. Oh, Brian stopped. Oh, there he goes. He's back.
No, he's thinking. That was like
Brian was perfectly frozen.
Right, like it was dead on froze. I love it.
What I hope to bring is something that's not this typical Black hero that everybody's rehashing. Mm-hmm. You've got 15 million Black Supermen out there, Wonder Woman of some sort. And so this group that you have here, everybody has a diverse comic that is not the stereotypical hero, I guess you could say. And that's what I enjoy about everybody on this panel, because I'm not expecting to see, I guess you could say, Mr. Greg, forgive me if I pronounce the name, is Nana. Mm-hmm. You're not going to see that everywhere. And I enjoy that about that book, because how many more Spider-Mans are you going to see out there? Or spider-like characters? How many? And with Bitterroot, fantastic. It picked a genre, writing it out. And I just hope I can get whatever I'm working on that diversity level. I like more diversity in everything that I do. And so hopefully I can stay on that track.
I like that. Dorphise, what about you? What statement do you hope your work adds?
My goal is to really promote girl power. And my son, he's medically disabled, so I'm actually creating a comic book based on children, because I've worked with different children with disabilities, autistic children, basically to bring out their comfort zone, to represent them. And my comics, I'm a I just became a world history teacher, so now I'm very big on history. So I want to actually, saturate people with so much knowledge from the history, because I just found out there was a Haitian pirate named Black Caesar, and I just made her into a female. So I'm actually going to be portraying a story based on him, but in a female perspective. So my whole goal is to educate people about history that's not being taught in school, that we have to research. So that's one of the reasons I love about Greg's book, because he's speaking about the African folklore, and Greg is very big on history. So I'm like, I'm the same way. I love history. So I'm like, I have to be that with my comic book. So I've been taking so much time and effort. You know, some people may like it, the route I'm going, some people may not. But guess what? They're going to buy it to figure out like what route I'm trying to go, and they're going to try to dissect it. That's the whole point. I don't care about negative comics or comments from people or positive. You're reading my comic book, but I'm going to take in that feedback and I'm going to saturate it into just do better. That's my whole goal.
Well said. Well said. Greg, since she invoked your name, come on, step up into this one.
I will say for me, one of the things that inspired is Nana, the word inspire, is the fact that I would ask certain people if they knew who certain Black figures were from our folklore, mythology, and spirituality. I would ask Black people, and I would get a, who is that? What? Even Anansi the Spider, way before Orlando Jones came and blew everyone away, the American Gods, I had a lot of people who had no idea who Anansi was. And to me, I'm thinking, well, if Anansi is probably our most well-known Black god and we don't know him, that's saying something about our stories. In a sense, it almost feels like our cultural traditional stories are sort of dying. So that was why I created as Nana, to be sort of like the next generation, reclaiming our roots and our stories and hopefully modernizing it to keep it going in some sense, which is why in every different story, he meets a different figure from a different Black diaspora culture. And so what I am trying to do with that is just use it as a way to introduce more people to who some of our gods, heroes, and deities are and our different figures, because we have characters that's just as cool as Heracles and Zeus and Thor, or even fairy tales, but we don't really know them. We're not required, we're not educated to know these characters. We're not tested on it as kids growing up. We get tested about who was Zeus's name 5 of Zeus's kids, and you can name like 100 because he knows there's adaptations of those 100 characters. So that's essentially what I'm trying to do with my own work, is use it as a way to hopefully intrigue somebody enough for them to do their own research to find out where do these characters come from.
Well said. Very well said. Jason, what about you?
I guess I would say that for me, I'm kind of similar to what I said before. I'm always just trying to represent something that feels as authentic as I personally can make it, being that I am not Black. Just, making sure that I'm doing justice to what it, should is sort of a weird term, but like, doing my best to illustrate and convey, not using tropes or stereotypes, not making it feel, not doing the thing there was the thing with Storm for like that was mentioned, and also the big thing that happened recently where it was like, why does Storm look like a white lady? Like that kind of thing, like making sure I'm not just putting like a Black skin over white features, and just trying to, if I have a story where I have to do a little bit of extra research, that just helps me become a more well-rounded person. It allows me to learn and educate myself on things that I probably haven't known or wouldn't not even know to look for in certain circumstances.
Well said. Very well said. Thank you. Seb?
Mm-hmm. So I think what my mum always says, like, write what you know. So I think it's just anything that I try and do sounds really crass, but I think it's like it comes down to the F words: fight, fuck, and fall in love. And you've got to want to have the reader you want to evoke some kind of emotional response, have some emotional weight, some emotional connectivity. And then if you can speak in layers in storytelling and art and so on, so it has it hits in different keys and different ebbs and flows of you as a human being and your spirit, and you try and invoke as much of your own spirit into your work, then you hope it connects to the reader and it connects to their soul and their spirit. And that sounds all fucking obnoxious and up my ass, but that's just the real. That's just,
tell that truth, man. Tell that truth.
It's for the kids. It's for the kids.
Right. Wu-Tang forever. David, what about you?
Well, it's interesting because everyone said stuff that resonates with me. One of the things, and I'll put him on blast for a moment, is with Greg. I think I have all of his books at this point, and I enjoy them, and they're inspiring. And as I was looking at the one with the John Henry one, I'm always bad with titles. I was like, yo, man, this is like, how can we do more of this? And by we, I mean whoever's interested, And one of the things that's really got me intrigued, and one of the things that I want to do, I have two really big goals going into the new year. One is I want to start introducing people to the talent that's going on the African continent, because there's like a crazy scene in terms of comics and animation and some amazing talent that it's not being introduced here, and it's like we don't know each other. We don't know most of the creators in Africa. A lot of them don't know us, although our comics, American comics, make it over there more easily than theirs make it over here. So I really am really trying to figure out ways, and not just Africa too, but also in the islands, because there's so much culture. And we as a people, if you look at Blackness as a much larger construct, we're really disconnected from each other in a lot of ways. And yet there's commonalities that we might not even recognize, whether it's based on folklore or mythology or just tradition. And then the other thing, and Dorphise was talking about this, I've been doing more work in nonfiction. I've been really fortunate to do that. And that to me is like, that's it. Like if you told me today I could not do anything else other than nonfiction comics, I'd be like, okay, I'm cool with that. As long as you let me pick the subjects that I want to do.
Right.
And I look at like what John Lewis and Andrew Iden and Nate Powell did with March. And that to me was so inspiring. And I realized, like, I'm not going to live long enough to do all the books that I would like to do. Like, I'd like to see a graphic novel about the life of Ida B. Wells. I'd like to see. There's so many different topics and people, and I think that's the exciting thing that's opening up with comics. I just got the other day. I bought they did I can't remember what publisher did a graphic novel adaptation of Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, right? And it's beautiful. It's an amazing adaptation. And I was like, okay, but I want to see some James Baldwin adapted into graphic novel format. I'd like to see some Chester Himes. I'd like to see some Zora Neale Hurston. There's a dope biography graphic novel about Zora Neale Hurston. But I want to see more of that. I want to see, as much as I love superheroes, and I know this conversation is primarily about superheroes, but there's so much more. And that's the thing that I love about this medium. It's like, I not only did I buy Slaughterhouse-Five, but I bought that new graphic novel about Kent State, which I don't know if any of y'all seen that. What's Durf's last? Back, yeah. And that book is like, yo, what? Like, why aren't more of us, and when I say us, more of us Black creators doing stuff like that? Why aren't I want to see a graphic novel about the Stonewall Uprising in the late '60s. I want to see a graphic novel like that makes me just go, yo, I already know about Stonewall, but you know what I'm saying? It's like it helps educate other people. And that's when I get really excited. When I go to the comic store, it's very rare that I buy a superhero book. I'll buy, once in a while I'll pick something up, but I'm always looking for what's something different? You know, what's something nonfiction? What's something that I can stare at and go, yo, how did they do this? Like I want to do this. My, you know, again, not to knock it. When I was a kid, I wanted to do it like Chris Claremont and John Byrne were doing, what Frank Miller was doing. Those are the guys I grew up with. That's not the stuff I want to do anymore. Now it's like, yo, wait a sec. What's this person over here doing?
Very well said.
What's Greg doing? That's what I do. I look at Greg. I see him doing his one-handed, one-finger push-ups, and I see him bench press a car, and I'm like, yo, man, that's what I want to do.
Listen, I'm stuck on dumb about the concept of the creators in Africa potentially being the new manga, revolution for us. Like that could be huge, and I'm fascinated by that.
There's a project I'm working on. I'll tell you.
Yeah, we need to. Yeah, I need to know all about that. I need that in my life. As we roll out of here, I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to say where we can find you on social media. So, Dorphise, let's start off with you. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Oh, you want me in my personal or my fan page? Because I don't think they want to see my personal. I'm like very reckless on there. So let's
whatever you want to give up. I mean, let people know who you are.
Well, if they want to see my personal page, it's Dorphise Jean. Instagram and Facebook, my fan page is Fierce Destiny Universe, and on Twitter, I'm Fierce Destiny U. Those are. I'm actually working on my website. It's Melanin She Writes. That's where you're gonna be able to buy my comic book. So I'm actually working on it right now. But if you want to get on my personal page, just censor your eyes. Just keep scrolling because I'm very outspoken.
And nothing wrong with that. Brian?
You can find me under Brian the Artist. Brian_DA_artist. And that's pretty much Instagram and Twitter, and on Facebook, BDA Creates.
Nice. Greg?
So you can find me, Greg A. Elysee, on Facebook, on Twitter, Greg ANDELYSEE, and on IG, GREGDAE, Greg Day. I am currently running a Kickstarter, so David, you got to get back on Kickstarter for the next one. It's None of the Weird Spider Showtime. You could even just find that, go on Google, type in It's None of the Weird Spider Showtime. It should be the first link that shows up. And that's about it.
Seb?
You can just find me at Stranger Comics, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and the website, strangercomics.com, at Stranger Comics on social media.
Jason?
You can go to my website, jasonpiperberg.com. I'm Jason Piperberg on Twitter and Instagram, and Jason Piperberg Illustration on Facebook.
David?
Best way to find me is to go to davidfwalker.com, all one word, because I have so many different handles on other social media. But there's links to everything, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. So davidfwalker.com.
Excellent. I'm Victor Dandridge at Vantage In-House, the hardest working man in comics, saying thank you to this wonderful panel. I mean, you guys brought all your A game, B game, C game. You brought all the game, and it was amazing to share some time with you guys. I want to give a shout out to Maya Crown for bringing us together. MechaCon is life. Real talk, this is my first one, and it was amazing. Like, I have to admit, I love doing this. So thank you to everyone that's been watching. We thoroughly appreciate all the love and energy. Till next time, you guys.
See you later.
Thanks, guys.
All right.